If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brain Supreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Derek Stitt. We are having our film fundraiser for movie number 3. It's going to be a sci-fi comedy mockumentary featuring myself and many of your favorite researchers, authors, and content creators. We're going to have fun with this one. It's going to be different than the others that I've done before. If you'd like to make a donation for our fundraiser, please use the link in the description. My films are completely self-funded with the help of your kind donations. Also, be sure and check out my other films. Doors of Perception on Amazon Prime. I Call It Louisiana is on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and many more. We are booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Derek Stitt. He is a musician, researcher, and host of Talking Stitt podcast. Derek, welcome. How you doing?
What's up, brother, man? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for
Appreciate
coming
it.
on, man. Ready to get into this? Today you wanted to discuss the layers of strangeness surrounding the music industry, corruption, strange occult symbolism and rituals, untimely deaths, mind control, intelligence fingerprints. It seems the less you know about your celebrity idols, the better these days, because it's really difficult to find any famous musician or celebrity that hasn't been compromised in some way, except for yourself. You're a musician. This is why we're going to get your insights into this. Very excited about that. Before we do, this is your first time on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know how they can find out more.
Well, like you said, I'm a musician. Been playing bass and guitar since like 11 years old, so about 25 years now. Played in all kinds of bands, whether cover bands, original bands, big stages, little stages, no stage whatsoever, playing on the floor to 3 people. And anyways, just always questioned weird stuff in the world. And so as kind of the podcast thing was taking off and more, I've always been into conspiracies, basically, like music and conspiracies. And that's kind of what we're going to get in today because they kind of go hand in hand. But long story short, basically being in the music world and then meeting all kinds of different people along the way and stuff, you start meeting all these different minds, whether they're good minds or bad minds. And then you just kind of, my questioning of everything else got a little more and more, and then decided one day to hit record on a laptop and started talking shit. So that's my show, Talking Stitt. And yeah, talk to musicians, actors, comedians, conspiracy theorists, all the above, the whole gambit.
How did your journey of awareness come to fruition? Was it through the music? Was it through research or any specific events or unfoldings that happened in your life?
Well, I always had like a curious mind from like being a kid. So I'll honestly say it started with getting a library card and so I was going and finding like, the Bermuda Triangle. So I was born in 89. So let's say 5-6 years old, checking out books at the library, mid 90s. Right. And so Bigfoot, Bermuda Triangle, aliens.
I was there with you, man.
I wasn't completely into, like, I didn't understand or know of the occult stuff yet or any of the government stuff or geopolitics, but just weird stuff you'd see in a movie like, whoa, aliens are kind of cool. Whoa, Bigfoot, who the hell's this guy? And So that kind of started my journey. And then, like I said, as you started playing music and playing in bands and bumping elbows and smoking joints outside by the dumpster with people and just having weird conversations, you start to get little tidbits of stuff along the way of like, Dog Man, what the hell is Dog Man? I just thought my friend was stoned, man, you know? And then it's like you start like researching little things and then you go, whoa, that is kind of weird. So I like I said, kind of the basics, but UFOs, Bermuda Triangle, and Bigfoot really started it for me.
Right on. Earlier, we were briefly discussing the state of the music industry. What are your thoughts on where it's gone versus the time frame where you grew up and first became interested in music?
You know, it's a weird like me and my wife. I was talking about the other day, like out of a nostalgia thing, in the '90s and early 2000s when all my friends were listening to Corn or Limp Bizkit or things like that. Then and it's not that I wouldn't listen to it. I was around it because my friends were listening, but I was growing up with like '70s and '60s and classic rock because my dad and everything. So it's this weird thing where one day, like I was alluding to you before we started recording, like one day after like post 9/11, which is such a weird thing, but it's where I can put the timestamp on it is like, where did all our decade differences go? Where did the shift of like, okay, '80s are over, so we're not dressing up like flamboyant males with extreme guitar solos. No more guitar solos, flannel and depression is in. You know, it's like each decade was a different culture shift, but then it's strange that, like I said, post 9/11, post 2000, we just kind of it's just turned into this weird blob. And even people are saying like time feels like it's speeding up, or and then time and rhythm, notes and harmony, vibrations, they all go within music as well. So I don't know if there's really anything to that, but it's just a strange thing I've been kind of thinking about lately.
Within that paradigm, the industry has changed tremendously from what I understand. I used to play music in bands in the 90s a long time ago, but I was never really in the industry per se. We had one little album that we made with an 8-track in our garage, but that was the extent of my experience with that. But it does seem to be a much different landscape now with the ability to post your music on streaming services and have it distributed that way. But what's it look like to you compared to whenever you first started playing? Does it seem like the independent artist has a better shot at getting out there now than they used to?
I know what you're saying. I think there's a little more of like you can be more of a flash in the pan, but I don't think, unfortunately, like you're not going to have the success without the money and the backing behind you. But then with that comes the double-edged sword of being roped along to what the producers and the studio execs and all those guys, when you get in contract mode versus freedom mode, it's same with a podcast. If you really think about it, like if you do it by yourself versus having all these sponsors and these guys that tell you what you can and can't say, how your music can and can't sound, too many ballads on this album, too many. So the freedom comes kind of with a cost to where it's a weird thing where nowadays we can do it all on our own, but you've got to unfortunately like keep pushing constantly, like the TikTok world with conspiracies or things like that. Like you don't have that other guy to be like, oh, I recorded the guitar part. Cool. I'll see you in a week and then tell me what happens next. Like those days are kind of over if you do want to make it to some extent. But seeing what happens to all these people that make it, it's a scary thing where like, wait, knowing more now, why the hell would you want to make it? I mean, that's a real kind of legit question. It's almost like a politician. Like you kind of got to be a psychopath at this point to want to be some top level arena performing musician, in my opinion.
When it comes to the corruption of the music industry or even music in general, maybe we could even go back to the changing of tuning from 432 to 440 hertz.
Yes.
But where do you want to start when we're looking at the earliest manifestations of this toxic music industry?
You know, it's funny. It's like wars. There's always been wars, but then now we have like the military industrial complex. That's kind of what like music, vibration, singing, all these things had always been around. But then it's like once these big wigs, these CEOs and people got their hands on it, they corrupted it. And then it really goes into the idea of kind of like a cult of conspiracy too, or not conspiracy, but cult of personality of like how, like I was saying, the different shifts between decades, how they can just change everybody, whether it's gangster rap, whether it's
Yeah.
disco, whether it's hippies. It's just like a light switch. They can walk in with this power and shift the masses. So then when you think about like, well, what is music? It's vibrations and energy and stuff. So if there's good vibrations, negative vibrations in the world, then once you get those dickhead CEO guys controlling things, why would they not start pushing the negative? I mean, like I said, think of what gangster rap did to black communities versus like early 80s, kind of rap and hip hop and Grandmaster Flash and things like that. Like, you're like, well, this is cool. And then all of a sudden it became very dark and negative. Like the negative
Yeah.
energy was put into it. It's so, man, I don't know. I really think there's just this controlling hand that knows more about just not just the business side, but they understand that tuning, vibrations, frequencies, those things, and they know how to manipulate the masses. Think of the Astro World, Travis Scott situation. People start turning into a hive mind and pulsing and going. It's weird because when it's good, it's beautiful. But if you're using it for nefarious reasons, bro, you start getting into like riots and stampedes and deaths and things, and it kind of takes the beauty away from the music. You get what I'm saying?
100%. When we look back to more modern music, at least in the 60s and 70s and even 80s and 90s, as you were alluding to, that fundamental shift in how the music is expressed and the difference between generations seems to have stopped after those eras of music. But we can really look back to those eras. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so a lot of that music is near and dear to my heart, but it does have a lot different feel to it than today's modern music. But even then, when you look into the artists and the studios and the production and the way that it was pushed upon the masses, I can look back and see how I was swayed even into the punk rock music and identified as part of that punk rock generation and the culture. It was very immersive, and the music was really at the heart of it. They figured out how to weaponize that ultimately, and I'm not saying that all genres of music are specifically weaponized and used for culture creation, but we can definitely tell the ones
Correct.
that are, and I would say pop music is at the top of that list there.
Yeah, dude. And just one tiny little sad caveat. You were like bringing up punk music. And so I wouldn't necessarily consider Rage Against the Machine punk music. It was kind of punk
Yeah,
ideology, like stand up, big middle finger to the system, all that. And then you see like the fakeness of how some of these, like not every group over the years has been manipulated or, been a fake thing like Backstreet Boys and whatnot. But the thought that like Rage Against the Machine turned into Rage for the
Yes.
Machine, COVID happened, and you can't come to our show. Hey, give middle finger to the system, but make sure you have your mask on and your Vax card while you're showing up. So we kind of saw like what you're saying, near and dear to your heart. How many movies did we grow up with to see that old actors get social media and turn into, can I say retarded
Yes,
on the
man.
show? Okay, cool. And then, like look at Robert De Niro, they turn into retards, and you're like, oh, but dude, you were in so many great movies. But so you start to see that some of those people you thought were one way might have actually been kind of bought and sold, and now their true colors are really shining through as they get older.
COVID was
But then
the
punk,
dead giveaway for folks like that. There were so many that were mandating masks and vaccinations and taking their music off of Spotify because they didn't agree with certain policies or whatever the hell they were doing to conform to the agendas. It was a great revealing for people who are aligned with the system and who are easily manipulated and brainwashed.
dude, you talking about taking music off Spotify. I mean, Neil Young. So Neil Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and then all his solo stuff. And so you got like For Dead in Ohio. You're singing a cultural political song back then
Yeah.
because you don't trust the man. The man shot these people at this protest in Penn State. Was it Penn State, I believe, or
Yeah.
Kent State, in Ohio or whatever. And anyways, so these these people, like the hypocrisy. You saw Neil Young going after Rogan, and people can love or hate Rogan. I don't listen to him as much anymore. It just depends on the guest if it's a interesting one. But the irony of like Joe Rogan just talking shit on the internet with a microphone, saying maybe we shouldn't trust the system, trust the experts because they've lied to us all these other times. And so we just saw, like I said, the hypocrisy again of Neil Young, who used to be Mr. Hippie and screw the establishment. Now I'm lockstep in line for it.
That makes me wonder to what degree are these people under complete control, even from the get-go? Were they created by three-letter agencies? Were they created to be the conformist artists that they are? In many cases, I'm sure they were. In some cases, I'm sure they had great natural talent and they were scouted and infiltrated and then groomed to be something completely different than they were supposed to be. Or they threatened to take their money away, and that'll change their tune quickly if they're making a lot of money. So I'm sure there's many reasons for the way that artists and the reasons that artists would align with certain ideologies and agendas. But going back to some of the original rock and roll artists, it does seem, if you the deeper you look into it, it does seem that there is some creation of different musical artists happening at some level. At least some very powerful grooming and steering in certain directions.
100%, dude. I mean, let's just go back to the damn beginning with like Elvis, obviously, and then the fact that 90% of Elvis's songs, it's more than 90%, aren't even Elvis songs. Like they're almost every single time somebody else's song. So it's this cultivating, like, there's some executive that's sitting back, cultivate, this guy has a good song, it'd be better if Elvis sang it.
Yes.
Grab that one, grab this one, grab that one, grab that one, and then now we've got 5 CDs worth. Now we have a 5-year plan, release a CD each year with 10 songs, et cetera, et cetera. And then so you get this idea of like it can take something that was beautiful at first, like, and then a lot of those were black blues artists that had no. And it doesn't have to turn into like a civil rights thing, but it's like, yeah, a lot of those guys at the time didn't really have some of the same rights. So they were able to just get ripped off. They could write great music, and then some big fat white guy could walk in smoking a cigar and be like, hey, I like that song. Send it to his guy. So you see it from the beginning that it's always been kind of co-opted. Elvis is a strange one because the more you learn about him, the more you're like, kind of fuck this guy. But you also are... It's a weird thing where if there's never been a rock star and you're the very first one, like, what do you do? Like, you don't know what to do. There's no standard of like, okay, so-and-so OD'd at this age, so maybe try not to do what he did. And this guy, you kind of see what I'm saying? By 72 or 3, we had about 10 deaths and shit. We're like, okay, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. But Elvis being the first guy, late 50s, coming out and being the original rock star, and then the sexualization, which is another thing, because then, all of a sudden the 50s and 60s, girls started to get a little more promiscuous. And if that's their thing, that's their thing. But you could still see that manufactured thing, like the parents were outraged. The let's say, okay, so baby boomers, would that be the ones coming from post World War II? Or would they be the kids of World War II? Does that make sense? Anyways, the kids of those kids are the rebellious ones of the 50s and 60s, basically. And so it went from old school traditionalism in the country to like, let's just go wild and, get crazy. And so all the tropes and stereotypes of reefer madness, and then, the sexualization, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling, but I'm just saying, yeah, you could see that manufactured hand coming in and changing everything by the time 62, 63, back to another cultural shift. Kennedy's assassination, like basically around there is when shit got really funky in the Americas.
Yeah, I talked to quite a few guests recently about the 3 psychological operations that happened in modern history that were able to really steer society in major ways. JFK assassination, 9/11, and COVID. That's a completely different topic, but you're right. Each generation has a certain level of degradation when it comes to its morality, its connection to spirituality, its connection to nature. We become more and more reliant on technology. The level of morality for most of society has degraded severely since, say, the 1950s during the era of Elvis, which I believe you're correct, really kicked off this sexualization in the entertainment business and normalization of that type of thing, to where each generation it would get more risque and they would allow a little bit more to be shown on television and it would become more acceptable, just like every other debaucherous agenda that's coming out these days.
Well, and then it kind of normalized the pedophilia
Yeah.
side of it too, because I mean, of Priscilla, what was she, 14 or 15? I can't remember. They say they didn't have sex, so she was all, yeah, you know what? That's what every fucking pedophile that's grooming says, you know. Oh, hey, we're just, you know, using hand stuff. It's still a kid, bro. Like, anyways, so then like that turned into a thing where another band I love the hell out of. Everybody says the Stones and the Beatles. Who's better? The Who. Okay, the Who, man. The Who came in. In my opinion, you brought up punk rock. I think the Who kind of created punk rock. If you go back and watch all these old 70s punk bands, they weren't influenced by the Beatles. That was the pop rock. The Stones were kind of like the black blues and, you know, drinking some beer and having a good little swagger rock and roll. And then the Who just came in and smashed instruments and blew drums up on stage. You're like, these guys are punk rock. But then Pete Townsend is, you know, got some weird pedophilia past. Then you got Gene Simmons in the 70s, you know, Christine 16 and shit like that, which I'm a huge Kiss fan, but separate art from artist. I get it. And then you know, it's like these people were just like so brazen about it. You get into the 80s, Motley Crue, the song All in the Name of Rock and Roll. That's the name of the song. The first lyric of the song, she's only 15. She's the reason that I can't sleep. You're like, you're not even hiding it at this point, you know? But then it goes to like these people, it's idol worship. They see these musicians and these larger than life, let's say the 80s for a second, like Motley Crue. There was no hiding the cocaine and the pedophilia and the debauchery. There was no hiding. That's what made them famous, you know? So people wanted to be like Motley Crue. And then that's like that weird also like, wait a minute, is somebody still steering that even worse degradation? Because if Elvis was bad, dude, Motley Crue is Elvis on steroids, if you think about it, you know?
100%. Earlier, you mentioned untimely deaths, people who have overdosed, but there have also been mysterious deaths, assassinations. Think about things like the 27 Club, where these people seem to all be dying at the age of 27, which seems oddly strange. What are your thoughts about
ritualistic
the
almost
amount of untimely deaths that have occurred through the entertainment industry, specifically the music industry?
Well, here's another funny one that like it always you brought up like 27 Club. And this person is in the 27 Club, and it's a little bit of a weirder story too. So Graham Parsons from the 60s, from the band, you know, the old the group, the band or whatever. Or no, he was in the band or the Birds? I can't remember. But Graham Parsons was a part of this 27 Club. And his story is that once he died, his other bandmates went and grabbed his corpse, his body, drove out to Joshua Tree, and then cremated his body like a effigy, basically, or something, you know. And it's like, yeah, dude, it's so weird because this is like a mainstream thing that everybody knows. You know, okay, Brian Jones from the Stones 27 Club. You got Jim Morrison. You got Janis Joplin. You got, even nowadays, Amy Winehouse. You got, you know, like the list goes on and on. But it like, nobody brings up the Graham Parsons one where it's like, bro, his friends did like a ritual body burning in the desert. Like, that's insane. But I think there's something to it's like, I don't know whether it's a Hegelian dialectic shit or something, but there's this symbology. Like, I don't know of what the number 27 means in gematria or if there's some deeper meaning to it, but there's something about like we can make you as big as you want, but there's this like cutoff date is almost what it,
Yeah.
because I don't know what the 27 club is to me, but I feel like it's almost like, okay, we're going to give you everything you want. And then all of a sudden, here's a new watch that only counts down. It doesn't count forward, it counts down to your last second. So enjoy
Gotcha.
everything that we've given you. And then once that number hits, you know what's next, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Along the same lines of the untimely deaths and your talking points, you mentioned the sacrificed family members that
Uh-huh.
could possibly have some correlation with some sort of occult esoteric ritual.
Well, I think there's okay, that's the two
Yeah.
things in one because back in the day, it seemed like, and I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head right this second, but it, it seemed like you had to sacrifice something to get something. Like you had to, like a family member or something like that. But nowadays, it seems like it's inverted to where you have to like sacrifice one of your kids, but not death. Like you have to stand in the public eye
Uh,
and say that I stand with my trans
right,
child
right.
now or something. So in a weird way, like if you think about it, like when they say like the trans community, you're dead naming me. So you're still sacrificing somebody. If your son was born Steven and then turns into Samantha, Steven is dead. But if that keeps you in the spotlight, I mean, think of just actors alone. How many of all these actors in the past 5 years, 10 years, all of them have like three trans kids, like Megan Fox or things like that? You're like, there is no, like, if this is a betting app, like if this is Kalshi or, whatever, you go put some money down right now. Like the odds are not happening in that
Yeah.
favor. So I don't know. You got the Michael Jordan stuff, which that's basketball. I get it. But Michael
Oh,
Jordan's
yeah.
dad, or then you got Kanye. Kanye talked about sacrificing they made me
That's
sacrifice my
right.
mom. Kanye said that many times. You're like, but like, I don't know. I think it started getting too obvious with the internet world of shit. What's her name? Sorry, I'm rambling like
No, it's
Kurt
all
Metzger. I got
good.
so much shit going on
Didn't
in my
Lady
head.
Gaga
But you
have
got
some other.
Lady Gaga. That's who I was gonna say.
Okay.
Yes, like had somebody else sacrificed that she
Yeah.
basically like stole her entire persona and everything. After I don't remember the story, but somebody falling to their death off of a building, a balcony situation, and you're like, ooh, falling from grace, and I'll take your persona and carry it on from here. And dude, I don't know. I think that with the problem with sex, drugs, and rock and roll is so many people are just ready to be famous that if it literally means throwing your friend under a literal
Mm.
bus, like they're gonna take that because they're just psychopath narcissists anyways. That's why I said earlier of you would almost have to, like, knowing what we know now and how all these people's claim to fame and getting famous over the years has happened, you'd almost be crazy to want to be famous at this point.
When you look at how many people have also been suicided that are connected
Mm.
with the entertainment industry, I have to think of Isaac Cappy, who was rattling off names, and this is not necessarily just for the music industry, but film and entertainment as well. From the beginning, they are just being used and blackmailed and groomed to be in that position to be able to throw away at a certain point. Once
Hmm.
they reach their usage, whatever they have been created for, and after they've kind of reached their, like you said, expiration date, it's fair game to take them out in some way.
Man, the Isaac Cappy thing makes me think of the whole. Let me ask you a
Mm.
question. Like, what are your thoughts on the Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington
I
rabbit
don't
hole?
know
Because it's that
enough
same.
about that, really. I,
I think it's suspicious that the biggest suspicious thing is like you get more questions asking questions. You don't really get answers. That's the conspiracy
mm,
world, right? But like the fact that, okay, Chris Cornell, yeah, He's known to be a heroin user and a this and that, a bunch of other drugs and stuff. It was the 90s, baby. Okay, I get it, right? Back to the culture shift. Why did all the drugs shift at the same time as the music shifted? Oh, I don't know. The 80s, we got cocaine coming in from fucking South America and Nicaragua and shit. Let's give that to the musicians to promote that. So, anyways, back to the 90s. Heroin was the new drug of choice, right? So, if you've got Chris Cornell from Soundgarden doing heroin because that's the thing that they're supplying to the musicians at that time of the big artists, then you get that good old scapegoat they can use of like, well, they committed suicide or they're crazy and they're on drugs or they were depressed, and you're like, nobody asks why. Why were they crazy and why were they on drugs? So the rabbit hole of like Chris Cornell was apparently hypothetically digging into child sex trafficking and things like that. I don't know how much I believe that, but it's interesting. But then Chester Bennington, a year later to the day, does the exact same way of committing suicide, which is basically just, what do you call it, autoerotic asphyxiation kind of shit like David Carradine, but doing the exact same thing ritualistically a year later to the day. That's what makes the red flags pop up. Like if one person did it, nobody really questioned when David Carradine did it. They were like, damn, dude, that's how horny you are. Shit, that's crazy. But, they just moved on. But the fact that two musicians that like apparently were trying to tell the truth about this child sex trafficking shit do the exact same thing a year later to the day, that's nuts. And then you get into the Chester thing, which gets even weirder because then you get into that John Podesta territory and the Pizzagate and all the stuff like that. And you're like, are there musicians almost like a reverse Manchurian candidate? Like you're programmed in at first like a Manchurian candidate, but then there's others that like they break the programming and they're like, no, I'm going off reservation, like Tripoli would say. And then once you try to go off reservation, take them out. You got Chester Kirk, what's his name? Chris Cornell. The idea, Isaac Cappy as well. You can even throw in what they say about Fast and Furious guy, Paul Walker. Right. It's like, why does this story keep popping up? Whether it's just in conspiracy circles, but there's kind of a lot of those stories where this guy got taken out when he was investigating these things, and you're like,
yeah.
You're getting too big for your britches,
I think, like I said earlier, that they don't have much of an awareness of what they're really getting into. And the deeper they go, probably the more compromised they get, the more that they have to participate in things, pedophilia or debauchery that is held against them at some point. And some people, I believe, are just strung along and they have no idea what's going on at higher levels. But for some reason, maybe they start to get wind of it or find out. And those people are probably some of the biggest threats as well.
Yes. And then you've got the ones that sometimes are just dumb and they're just going along with it. And then they find out, they're like, what's going on? And then they stay complacent because fear of losing their value, losing their reputation, or possibly losing their life. But a really strange one is Dave Grohl. Have you gone down the Dave Grohl rabbit hole at all?
I know that it was around the same time that he forced the drummer to get the vaccination. As far as anything conspiratorial or deeper, I haven't really gone down that rabbit hole.
Well, let's go back a little because Dave Grohl's got even more than just the weird drummer dying thing of most people don't realize Dave Grohl wasn't the original drummer of Nirvana.
Right.
And then Dave Grohl, apparently his dad has military connections in a way where his dad was like not military, political. His dad was like the speechwriter or something like that for Ronald Reagan. Okay. In the 80s. So then we see that weird connection again. Oh, wait, you're just placed in there. Just like Jack Black's mom worked on the lunar, bullshit and the coding, but that's a whole nother subject. But he'll come back up because he's good friends with Dave Grohl. But so Dave Grohl basically gets ushered into this band. Then you have, in a weird way, Courtney Love gets ushered into the picture of that band, and her father is like ex-CIA, I believe, and he's got all kinds of weird shit. And she said, she was SA'd a lot as a child and all that crazy shit, and disassociation kind of shit, which would lead to the drugs and her demise on most things. She's still alive, but she's been known as just oh, you're a junkie, you're a whatever. Nobody asks why. What happened to you? What made you choose that path? So back to Dave Grohl. You got these two powerhouses coming in, Dave Grohl, Courtney Love, and Dave Grohl, once Kurt is out of the picture, decides, I want to be the front man now, which, okay, you've been a drummer, and if you can sing, then cool, then you will step up front. But it is kind of weird of like, did you sit back and wait for that front man position, I want to be up front instead of the drummer guy. So then he comes in with the Foo Fighters, right? The Foo Fighters is already a weird name because that was, I believe the Japanese called some of the Nazi craft and shit that they saw flying in the air and stuff. It was the old World War II term, Foo Fighters. So anywho, Dave Grohl, he comes in, blows up. Then Taylor Hawkins comes in on drums from Alanis Morissette. She's kind of a weird one too. And then they just blow up, man. So then you get into the movie side of Dave Grohl. He's not just a musician. Dave Grohl was in The Pick of Destiny with Jack Black. And, they had the piece of the devil's horn. That was the guitar pick, right? Dave Grohl plays the literal devil at the end of this movie with the big rock off, like devil went down to Georgia kind of thing. I'm the devil. I love metal. He's doing the big drum solo. And so you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Devil shit and rock and roll. Okay. One time's fine. Then a few years later, this is like during COVID time, makes his own Dave Grohl movie, Studio 666. And you're like, what? That's weird. I never saw the movie, so fill me in if I'm wrong on something. But so basically, Dave Grohl becomes possessed in the movie. And then he just starts killing every single band member one by one. And then within a year, Taylor Hawkins dies in real life by drug reasons. And you're like, it's always the drugs. They always blame the drugs. Oh, he's an ex-drug addict. He's been to AA meetings. But so it's always an easy alibi to take somebody out if they've had a drug past. Doesn't mean they're still not doing it, but it's a good, easy way to take somebody out. So then Dave Grohl then goes through this weird humiliation ritual. Do you remember this the last year or two where come to find out he'd been having a secret affair?
Oh, really?
He announced that he had a baby with another woman while he was married. He's apparently fixed his relationship now. The Foo Fighters are back together. He had to go through this humiliation ritual thing where they took him out and like you got too big for your britches again, like I was saying. So Dave Grohl's back out playing gigs again, and they've got a new drummer for the Foo Fighters, and it's just almost like you had your little hiccup. We're going to make things hard for you for a minute, and okay, continue on.
Wow. There's also...
But dude, the Dave Grohl rabbit hole's weird.
That is weird. Well, there's also the MK Ultra rabbit hole with these celebrity psychiatrists and doctors that show up in their lives when they're veering off the path a little bit, take them into a retreat for a few days, and a few days later they're back to their old antics, or their attitude has completely shifted and they're no longer causing any more trouble. We see this with Kanye, if he's one of the prime examples of this. Britney Spears. There's been a few others that have been associated with going off the deep end and then being reeled back in with some kind of doctor or psychiatrist or retreat or something like that.
What do you think on the Britney Spears thing, man? And I don't mean to go off the deep end, but like some people will be like, that's not even Britney anymore. That's not even the same person. Well, I did see one where someone was pointing out in one of the weird videos that supposedly Britney posted how they were having AI glitches, and at times when she was spinning around, you could briefly see it was somebody else that was spinning in the picture, and I don't know if Britney's using AI or someone else is faking the videos, but it was a pretty compelling analysis. I have no idea what's going on, though. And then back to that sexualization of teenagers and shit, because, like, think of her start, dude. Yeah. Like, I mean, oh my God, you got guys that are like, okay, obviously actors, but like Ashton Kutcher is obviously fallen from grace, and a lot of those guys. But you go back to when he was, what was his old show? Punk'd. And then with like Hillary Duff and Britney Spears and blah blah. Like he's like, oh yeah, these are all the girls we're counting down till they turn
Oh
18 and
Jesus.
blah blah. We're like, you're saying this on fucking MTV. You're saying this on TV, and 25 years later, we're seeing these clips and we're like, of course, it was right there in front of our faces. And so with the Britney Spears thing, you go back to "Hit Me Baby One More Time" and all that shit, and she's 16 years old,
Yeah.
man, and sexualizing the hell out of her. Now she's probably made some weird decisions over the years, true, but it's just like, man, we see the same playbook over and over again. But then to jump to Kanye, like you had mentioned him, what are your thoughts on recent Kanye? Because, like
He
you were
did another
saying,
flippity flu.
yes, he did another flip to where it just confuses everybody again, to where like you don't have to love or hate Kanye, but we're like, that goes to the argument where everybody can use the scapegoat of, well, he's bipolar. He's bipolar. End of story. You're like, no, is there a handler? Is there a guy jumping back in?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Kanye right now, I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but there's this weird thing of like Kanye turned into the rock star of doing whatever he wanted kind of thing of like, good for you, go in freedom mode and off the reservation. Go for it, bro.
Yeah.
But I think Kanye is scared as a father right now.
Yeah,
I think that, I mean, because I got 3 kids, and I can see Kanye seeing Northwest or whatever out with her mom and looking like a grown up now, and all the makeup and then the fake eye tattoos and all this shit. I think Kanye is freaking out as a father now, and like reality's hitting him. What are your thoughts on
I
that?
think you're right. He is either afraid for his life, or maybe he's wanting to get back in that limelight somehow, or he got a visit from Dr. Frankenstein and they did some mind fucks to him or whatever they do. It could be a lot of stuff. I'm really not sure about that. But while we're kind of entering the realms of hip hop and rap, what are your thoughts on the level of Satanism that has overtaken the hip hop industry? I was never into rap, hip hop, anything like that, but I have noticed that it has taken quite a dark turn in the past few years, really.
I think that's I was bringing up like gangster rap and shit like that in the 90s and earlier, and so I think it's this weird thing of the positivity of the 70s and 80s of like underground original rap and hip hop and stuff like that, when it was first coming out, and then it got co-opted to like money, bitches, cash, and
Yeah.
shooting people and drive-bys. And you're like, well, that's not satanic. That's just still really shitty behavior. But I feel like it was almost like one step after another
Right.
step to where it's like, if we can get that idea out there to like just get everybody to rebel against everything, yeah, there's God above. He's not going to agree with you out there. Just drive by, pop, 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 pop with your Mac 10 and shit. But it's like, well, whatever. I'm gonna get mine and get my money and get my whatever and get my bitches and hoes and shit. It became this idea to where it was like, oh, like seductively satanic without knowing it's satanic. Because then it turns into "do what thou wilt," and it's some Crowley shit. It's like, but they didn't just come out and say it right out the gate. They just gave you the idea of like, hey man, the world's out to get you. Just get your own, and you'll be happy. Just get your money, get your bitches, get some cool guns and cars. And then you're like, well, then that's extremely narcissistic and do what that will. Now it's blatant. It's blatant with not just Satanism, but the over sexualization of shit. I mean, you've got, and then that gets into the idea of like Baphomet and stuff, because you get what's retard's name? Little Nas X, like doing lap dances on the devil and shit. And you're like, and then Sam Smith and all these. Travis Scott, like the Astro World thing, which I brought up earlier, that is a weird rabbit hole to go down of the big mouth you walk through and everything else that goes with it. You're like, dude, of course people died here. Like, you shouldn't have walked in the door on any of these places. Like, the red flags are through the roof at this point. And I think they're just making, no offense to anybody that likes modern hip hop and rap music, but I think they're making dumb music for dumb people. Back to that, taking control of the energy and the frequency, because say like my favorite guitar player, Eddie Van Halen. Okay. Eddie Van Halen, for all of his life, everybody knows him. Every guitar player picked up a guitar, not every, but a lot picked up the guitar when they heard Eruption, and they were like, I want to learn how to do that. Anytime Eddie was asked about it 40 years later, he's like, dude, I can't listen to it anymore because I hit so many wrong notes. But those wrong notes, those imperfections are what made it real, is my point, because it was still like, it was wrong, but it was raw. Nowadays, we see that it's so manufactured. It's like the writing is on the wall, the red flags are everywhere, that, like I said, dumb music for dumb people. And I mean no disrespect, but they're manipulating minds with, think of just how music is. Boom, 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 boom. It's just droning tones. So if you know that certain tones like hemi-sync and things like that, you can hear certain tones put you in a good mood, certain tones put you in a bad mood. That's all modern music is now. It's just droning tones.
Mumble rap.
To aggravate people. Yeah, mumble rap. They're not even listening to the rap. They're hypnotized by the music behind the rap. You get what I'm saying?
It's pretty awful.
That's why it's crappy music, because whoever's the producer back there knows how to make these 3 semitones or whatever. We just drag it out for 20 seconds on each one of them, and it changes moods.
In your talking points, you have the Eyes Wide Shut style ditty parties. Beyond what's happened with Puff Daddy and some of the allegations, what are your thoughts on what could be happening at some of those other kinky type of get-togethers?
Well, man, you get into like right now currently, and you got like your Sabrina Carpenters and
I've
stuff
been
like
hearing
that.
a lot about
and
her. What's up with her, man?
I don't know a whole lot about her, but they're back to the weird sexualization of children. I don't care if she's 24, 25, 40, or however old she looks like she's 12 years old. And they're sexualizing the shit out of that. And they're doing it on purpose. So it's weirdly outing like pedophiles that are halfway pedophiles. They're not white. You know what I'm saying? They're like, well, she's legal. Yeah, but you're turned on because she looks 12 or 13 years old. So like the Jenna Ortega and shit like that kind of thing, where you're like, well, that's a borderline. I think, dude, these Eyes Wide Shut parties, I don't know, man. We get into the Epstein style shit. We get into the Diddy stuff. I think those parties still exist.
Of course,
and
yeah.
you know, exactly. Of course they do. And it turns into that, I don't know, back to the sex, drugs, rock and roll, young, dumb, full of cum. You bring in these new up and coming artists. You bring them into these parties, you glitz and glamour, show them everything they want. That's why I joke all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I never got famous, you know, because I'd have probably had a coke problem and whatever else. And I wouldn't be, you know, touching kids or nothing like that, but it's just still like they're going to have some kind of blackmail or compromising shit against you. But that's never going to end. It's still going to be there, to where you got 50 Cent with his new documentary that I've watched half of it on Diddy. It's actually pretty damn good. Diddy's trying to do a cease and desist order on it. You've got Marlon Wayans and a bunch of other black actors and close friends with Diddy coming out dismissing 50 Cent, not Diddy.
Oh, really?
The black famous community right now is going after 50 for throwing another black man under the bus. And you're like, oh, so Diddy's like, oh, or 50's like, okay, Marlon Wayans, you're going to call me out. Here's all your old posts from 15, 20 years ago. Ain't nothing like a Diddy party. Oh, here's me and Diddy partying. Oh, here's me in my underwear at a Diddy party. You're like, you guys are all trying to save face right now. And I don't know, dude. I don't know who's running the parties nowadays, but I know they're still going on. You know, it's that, how badly do you want to be in this club?
Have you looked at all into the possibility of Garth Brooks being a serial killer?
I did, out of laughing. And I'm also from Oklahoma, and so is Garth Brooks, right? So it started with the Tom Segura joke, right? And then Tom Segura started this hashtag of Garth, where are the bodies, or whatever the exact one was. And then what's weird about it is that Garth Brooks apparently addressed it, like in an interview, like just a few weeks ago. Dude, somebody asked him, some random like young guy, like, I don't know, he was at like an award show or a, you know, hey Garth, I got a question for you, you know, like just a microphone on your phone. And they're like, what are your thoughts on the Garth, where are the bodies hashtag thing? And I can't remember his exact words, but like you can look up the video. He just like basically stares right at the camera and like really menacingly says something along the lines of like, shit, I can't remember off the top of my head, but something along like you'll never
Oh
know
shit.
or something Kevin Spacey. Well, Kevin Spacey's got all those weird
Yeah.
accusations, and then he just like doubles down on it, and you're like, are you acting or are you like, are you threatening me? I see those eyes, dude. So, what are your thoughts on Garth
I don't
Brooks?
know,
I know
man.
he stole. You ever heard of Chris Ledoux, old '80s and early '90s
No.
country artist? He didn't die by Garth Brooks. Garth didn't bury him, allegedly. No, I'm joking. But Garth Brooks, once like the Lady Gaga thing, everything that Garth Brooks was known for, the zip lines and all this shit. Chris Ledoux was a straight up real what do you call it? Rodeo rider, bad motherfucker, a bunch of belts. He was super cool, but he was like the rock star rodeo country guy. And then Garth Brooks stole his entire show. Everything, like people compare video to video, and you're like, it's obvious. And then Garth Brooks blows up. So back to like the Lady Gaga thing, but where do you think Garth hid the body? Is it in
It's a
Oklahoma or did
crazy
he
thing,
hide him
man.
in
I'd
Cuba?
be interested in having the guy that recently wrote a satire, quote unquote, book about it. I forget his name, but I tried to reach out. I haven't heard anything. Hopefully, he'll come on the show and talk a little bit more about because he's done some pretty deep research into the whole thing. I want to go back to some of the stranger possibilities as it relates to the entertainment industry and celebrities.
Mhm.
Do you think Paul McCartney was killed and replaced with a clone? And what are your thoughts on the whole cloning of celebrity thing?
Man, I think, oh, if it was a magic 8 ball, all signs point to yes on the Paul McCartney
Yeah.
thing. You get into like, I don't know all the exact symbolism, but the fact that a lot of people will break down is it Let It Be? Is that the album cover where they're walking across the street? No,
Abbey
not Let
Road.
It Be. Abbey Road, yes. They break that down. He's out of step as everybody else. They break down that John looks like the preacher and George looks like the caretaker and the whatever. There's a lot of weirdness. There's old reports of Paul McCartney dying in a car wreck. There's weird, like these things that, like, when there's a massive shooting or something, and you see the initial report, and then 2 days later, it's a completely different story. There's a lot of that with the Paul McCartney thing. But outside of him, I really think that the cloning thing is real. And I think they do it on purpose because I don't know, go watch just a ton of movies or just the fact that they were telling you about Dolly the sheep and all that crap. If they're telling you about that decades ago, then they're already decades ahead of that anyways, and then decades later, they're half a century ahead of it now, if not a whole century. So what is it? I think it's Resident Evil 3, the movie. Not really that great, but one of the opening moments of that movie is Alice, which is Mila Jovovich, or however you say her name. They're trying to recreate another one because they realized how badass she was. So you see Alice waking up like the first movie, and you're like, whoa, what is this? Is weird. Is this a flashback? And then she dies down this hallway. Some laser cuts her head off or something weird. And then you see him toss out the body, and then the next one wakes up. They're just trying to replicate the same
Yeah.
one. So with the music industry at this point, I wouldn't doubt it that I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm completely committed to it, but I wouldn't doubt it that it, I don't know. Nothing in the world makes sense anymore, but something like that would make
Yeah.
sense. Just keep a narrative alive, you know?
Well, earlier we were touching on the state of our modern music industry. As far as technology in music goes, for example, I cannot even listen to any of that. It's just, it doesn't have any heart and soul. It doesn't bring out any emotion to me. Anytime anyone has played AI music for me, it's just doesn't sound good. I don't enjoy it. What are your thoughts on AI music and how people have been using AI and the future of AI as well?
I think that I'm with you on. I will say there's like two or three AI songs that I'm like, whoa, where I'm like, that actually kind of caught my attention because we hear so many of them now. One is I'll send you the links on both of these, dude. 50 Cent Many Men in like a hair metal version, and it's like epic as shit and awesome guitar solo. You're like,
Now,
no
don't get
way,
me
this is
wrong. The songs are
insane.
clever
And then
and The
Right,
melody's
right.
good, but there's just something missing in my perspective.
You know it's still something else. Yes, exactly. It's not an original new thing. Yes. I think we've been desensitized and almost programmed for this for the last 25 years or so since we went from analog. You'll understand this as a musician. We went from analog recording to digital recording. And dude, I've recorded a few CDs with different bands over the years. I've done multiple recording shit, singles and whatever. What I'm saying is you go in there and you realize when the guy is recording old school analog, you're like, this is fucking amazing. Like this feels real. This feels good. And then when you hear a good recording you did that's all digital, it still already felt like it was losing soul. Like we're still the people, the musicians, the literal people recording it, but then now we're at the point where we've gotten so used to that digital recording style to where it's taken the soul out of it. Whatever was left is gone now. Because, like I said, back to that Eddie Van Halen and stuff like that, your imperfections is what, weirdly, why people loved a lot of albums back in the day. Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, guys like that. Yeah, they're shredders, but they're still going to hit a wrong note. They're not going to go re-record a 5-minute song because after post 2003 and 5, you can just go record 5-second segments.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could go in and just make sound bites of a 3-minute song. Oh, I missed a note. Start it all over. No, we'll just rewind you 5 seconds. And you just jump back in. So it turned into that same. You kind of see where I'm going with that, where they desensitized us to where now AI music is taking over. And literally, like there was an AI country song that went to #1 and stuff like that on the charts, and you're like, I feel like we reap what we sow, man. We kind of asked for it. We took the originality out of music, and then now everybody that actually does originally write music that get propped up, your big pop artists and stuff, they suck anyways. So in a weird negative way, I feel like the next transition is screw it, just make fake music.
I feel that no matter how beneficial some might think AI is, it's too slippery of a slope. The implications are too dangerous, and it's already being used for nefarious purposes. I don't see us being able to put the reins on this in a sense, because I think it's already beyond what we'd be able to control. I think that maybe less participation might be the answer. I don't know what it is at this point, but in my perspective, I don't think we need that level of technology to thrive as humans, but that's just me. To close out, what are your final thoughts? Anything we didn't cover yet?
Man, I'll say this. I got 3 kids. My oldest, my daughter, she's playing flute in band. She plays piano at the house. She's got a guitar, but she doesn't really mess. She just likes to look cool and take a picture and feel like she's playing, a Les Paul. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. That's how you start. But she's learning piano stuff. She's learning flute, and I think that's the thing is like the last thing we were just talking about is like fakeness of music, and then the lack of just soul and real heartfelt emotion in songs. Like, teach your kids, man. Like, I don't know. It's gonna die if we don't keep it alive, and I don't mean I get black-pilled by the end of every damn episode, but I'm saying, like, if we don't keep music alive and keep real people and their real emotions and their real fingertips touching a guitar string or hitting on a drumstick, and we're gonna lose the weirdness of originality, because the AI is taking over, and that can be a whole nother episode. But just on the sense of music, we're about to be replaced by the damn Terminator. So pick up a guitar, learn some Rolling Stones. They might have been into cult shit. Learn some Led Zeppelin. They might have been into cult shit. I don't know. They were all into some weird shit. But regardless, go put some fingers to strings and make some vibrations. Exactly. It's like whether they were tapping into the wrong ethers or whatever they were doing, had some cool songs, man. So the music was actually real back then, is my point. It's you could go type in a prompt and write me a Led Zeppelin style-esque song for, very similar to the Rain song. And you're like, okay, Jimmy Page might have bought Aleister Crowley's mansion, but go listen to Jimmy Page's acoustic playing on the Rain song in open D tuning or whatever it is, and you're like, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. So we've kind of lost that original spark of humanity, let's just say, in just the music realm alone. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I ramble, but dude, my point is just don't let the robots
Don't
take
do it.
over music. I mean, there's been a bunch of pedophiles and all the others that have taken over it before, but that's the cool thing about it, is the alluding to punk rock or whatever. You can hate your dad and go plug in a guitar and make some noise, and you forget about it. You write a cool ass song out of your frustrations, out of your, worst downtime of life. Like, bring emotion back to
not only
music.
that,
That's what I'm trying to
music
say.
has healing powers. For me, there's been
Yes.
moments, the worst moments of my life, where the right song will change my perspective enough to get me going and get me past whatever kind of bullshit I'm going through. So music is powerful. Let's not lose that, right?
Yeah, dude. My 3 favorite bands: Boston, Thin Lizzy, and Van Halen. So go put on Boston, Don't Look Back, listen to the lyrics, drive your car, try not to go over the speed limit, but just go listen to the lyrics and all the guitar layers and shit on that song and all the harmonies, and you're going to go, this is what I needed today.
Right on, man. Derek, thank you so much. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can find more about you and get some talking Stitt.
Chris, love you, brother. I'm glad we've made connections and made this work, and you were on my show about 5-6 weeks ago. So yeah, Talking Stitt. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble, TikTok, and then you can find me under Derek Stitt on Instagram and Facebook. Mostly active on Facebook, Boomer Central, but it's all good.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll be doing this again for sure. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. Hello, friends. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order.